Live from the Old National Bank State Street Studio, this is WMVP WSAG HD2 Chicago, a Good Karma Brands radio station. Welcome in to Bears Weekly, a Chicago Bears network production. Download the Chicago Bears official app, brought to you by Verizon, to follow the team on the go. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, Bet Rivers, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
It's Bears-Browns, and thank you for joining us. A big matchup Sunday along Lake Erie in downtown Cleveland, Ohio for the Week 15 Bears-Browns matchup. And this is Bears Weekly with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks to our producers, Jordan Tredup and Dan Barilli from the Bears. And tonight in the ESPN 1000 studios, Jack McGrath and Sean Graney. Our executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. Coming up tonight, we visit with Bears cornerback Jaylon Johnson, and later in the program, Big Tom, former Browns quarterback Bernie Kosar from our Bears Etc. podcast that we taped this week tonight. All right, so the Bears go into Cleveland as underdogs, as they've been all season long, but that line keeps shrinking, Tom, not that we're into that, but the Browns have 9 starters out. If you take out guys like Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, and some really good defensive players, losing Grant Delpit at safety, 12 players of note on their injured reserve, and their top 3 tackles are out.
Yeah, but I think everybody's accustomed to that in the football business, because you know that everybody's not going to have a perfect roster at this time of the season. I mean, it's just like the Bears. Just in mid-stride, Yannick Ngakoue comes up and he's injured and he's out of the lineup. So how do you make changes accordingly? And I think everybody is faced with those types of injury issues throughout the course of a season. But to me, did Cleveland win last week? I mean, they got a quarterback that's 38 years old that's just come aboard. They have injury issues up and down their roster, but they still go out there and play a super brand of competitive football, and they're playing at home where they get great support. So just because there's injuries on the side of the Cleveland Browns, I wouldn't take them any less seriously than I would if they had a healthy roster week 1.
Right now, this will be the 4th consecutive game. It just occurred to me, if I have my math straight, the Bears played the Lions twice and the Vikings, and now going to play Cleveland. Those are currently, as the season ends today, there's 4 playoff teams. The Bears have a chance here. Should have beat Detroit the first time, beat Minnesota, beat Detroit. If they beat Cleveland, they will have beaten what now, if the season ended today, and it doesn't. December football is weird that way. I mean, what perspective does that give you about how these guys have come together?
I just like the whole fact that they've been improving throughout the course of the season. And Matt Eberflus, the head coach, has never lost the locker room. They're working in a positive direction, in segments and team and aspects of this group are making significant improvements week in and week out. So you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they had a backup quarterback in the mix, and the Bears were able to take advantage of them. Now the Cleveland Browns, they have a backup, a newly aboard quarterback that's in the mix, and they have to do the same to Joe Flacco. But when you look at what they did against the Detroit Lions and a quarterback that was probably playing as good as any quarterback in the league, the Bears were able to take advantage of him as well.
We're going to break this thing down with our coordinators every Thursday. They speak at Hallis Hall, so we get snippets of it. Luke Getzey, right in your alley, asked about the offensive line. This will be the 4th straight game that the Bears' offensive line, as it's currently constituted, has played together. That seems odd, but you feel them. You feel the difference they're making. Here's the offensive coordinator.
You're definitely seeing that chemistry, the communication, the different styles of defenses that we play. Some put extreme circumstances out there that the communication has to be on point. And when you play next to each other, sometimes you don't have to speak those words. You just know what each other are going to do. And so I think that's the long-term benefit of those guys playing next to each other, that will happen even more. But the short-term part of it is absolutely we're seeing the benefit of it. You have just that free play. Just take that play alone.
Yeah, that play alone was the 4th and 13 free play conversion to DJ Moore. You played it, and you played it well at a level that's beyond expectations these days. 7 straight years, you guys barely miss a snap together. You're saying 5. I mean, this is baby steps in terms of continuity with 4. How encouraged are you?
Oh, I'm super encouraged. You know, the first game I was getting ready to start for the Chicago Bears, Jay Hilgenberg, the center, came up to me and said, remember, you do my job first and then you do your own. And it's kind of just chemistry type of talk. Because when they had the discipline to stay on sides when the defensive lineman from Detroit jumped, and it gave them the opportunity for that free play, I don't think people understand how much discipline that takes. Because the first thing you want to do as an offensive lineman is, if you get a guy jumping off sides, is kind of overreact to him. They didn't do that. They kind of fell into place with their protection, and Justin read it accordingly, saw DJ down the field for a touchdown throw, and it became one of the biggest plays in the game.
Well, Tevin Jenkins has been graded out very high during his time this season, moving on both sides of the line, 8 games. And then Darnell Wright with a really, maybe his best game of the season last week.
But, you know, I think when you talk about chemistry, and I joke about Jay saying do my job first, I think this is what I was kind of getting at, is the fact that Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis, they have to really pay attention to the offensive tackles in this game. Because, first of all, they have to identify where Myles Garrett is lined up. And they have to understand, if they have any freedom, if they have a bubble over them, they're going to have all eyes approach on Myles Garrett. And so when you look at Tevin Jenkins and you look at Nate Davis, you're going to have to really take into account where Myles is so you can help these offensive tackles the most.
And Zadarius Smith. He may be on the other side of 30, but he's still a threat, as Luke Getsy outlined. It's not just Myles Garrett. It's also Big Z.
It's not just him. I mean, they give us a report each week, and I think they were like number one in like every defensive statistic in the league. So I was like, this is going to be fun, right? And then you go out there and you have 95 and 99 staring down at you at the same time. But it's fun. I think this is why you do what you do. You want to play against the best. And I think this is, yes, you have those two you have to account for at all times. There's no question about it that when you're going up against some guys like that your game plan has to be centered around those two guys.
Yeah, they are number one in 8 different categories, but in recent weeks they're giving up a lot of points.
Right. You know, when Reggie White was in the NFL, who was the defensive end that played on the opposite side of him? You don't know.
I can't remember anyway.
You weren't concerned about that defensive end on the opposite side. It was he played here for a while. I'll think of him in a minute. However, I'm just saying, back to Myles Garrett, you have to be 100% assured that you have as many hands and eyes on Myles Garrett as you can have, and that sometimes you're going to have some difficult circumstances for the opposite offensive tackle who's going to have to block Zadarius Smith by himself. So, again, it's about all due respect to Smith, but it's about Myles Garrett that you're going to have complete awareness of.
All right, we're going to take a break. Our first here on Bears Weekly. When we come back, we'll hear from cornerback Jaylon Johnson, my sit-down interview with him for our Bears Game Day live show that you'll see and hear on Sunday from Cleveland on Fox 32 Chicago. With Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN Chicago and the Bears Radio Network.
You're tuned into Bears Weekly with Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network. This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 23 years, Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by IGS Energy. Jeff and Tom with you on Bears Weekly, getting ready for the Cleveland Browns. Going into the break, Tom was trying to figure out who played opposite Reggie White, and you say it was Clyde Simmons.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
He was one of them because Reggie played at Green Bay. Reggie played, in other places. However, I'm just getting back to the Myles Garrett comparison with a guy like Reggie White, that when you're that awesome, that's where your focus begins.
All right, we got to talk about Jaquan Brisker before we get to Jaylon here real quick, because he is hitting and playing like a linebacker. He's playing as an inspirational and motivated and loud defensive player as you can get. They gave him 18 tackles from the coaches. See, they don't give those stats out anymore. Once upon a time, you'd get the league stats, and then on Tuesday you'd get what the defensive coaches gave, and the numbers were usually elevated, which helps the player out. No, those are kept secret, but when a guy gets 17 tackles like that, the coach, Eberflus, said, we had him for 18. This is Dave Borgonzi on Jaquan Brisker's impact on the defense.
Just the physicality and the tempo that he sets for the rest of the guys. I mean, he's a safety, but I mean, he plays, like you said, the way he hits and how physical he is, it's like a linebacker. And we've had safeties in the league that have played like that. But he's also a good cover player. So I think he's got the unique combination of he can play in the box, he can play the run, he's physical, he can tackle bigger backs, and he can also cover. And just Jaquan's mentality, I think, is awesome. Again, I talked about TJ and Tremaine about how they prepare, and Jaquan's the same way. Football's important to him, and how he prepares, I think, positively affects him, how he plays on Sunday.
All right, so there's a lot on the table for him on Sunday, actually, because the Browns are physical. They like to run the ball. Are they running it the way they did with Nick Chubb? No, but they have capable running backs, and Kareem Hunt's the change-up to Jerome Ford right now. Everybody knows what Hunt is like. And David Njoku. We don't talk enough about David Njoku at the tight end position. Uniquely gifted athlete.
Kind of gives me the most concerns for a quarterback that's just come aboard. Because if you want to talk about matchups that it's difficult to match up against in terms of a linebacker with tight end speed or a defensive back to the size to cover a line or a tight end, that's Joe Flacco's go-to guy right now. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears do, but you're not going to do anything without getting pressure on the quarterback. So everything has to match up with each other. And I think when you look at a guy like Jaquan Brisker, because he's not exclusively a defensive back, he can play at the first, second, or third level. That I think that's why, he's the guy that creates interesting matchups because he never gives away actually who he's going to cover.
All right, I wonder who Jaylon's going to cover. Jaylon Johnson. Amari Cooper is the guy that's the most targeted so far with Flacco. He had 14 targets, only 7 catches last week out of those 14, but an array of different types of receivers. But overall, Jaylon Johnson's been playing at a very high level this season. Pro Football Focus says he's the number 1 cover corner this point in the NFL. Here's my conversation with the Bears starting corner.
Would you agree this is a dangerous team right now?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, forget about it's a handful of games and see what happens.
Right.
Do you feel that way?
Oh, no, definitely. I think teams are, I won't even say scared, but it's a little unknown, I think, of what type of team we are, because I think we've given teams plenty of problems, and I think it's always about us not finishing, and I think that it can be scary for teams to go in and scout, because it's like you look at the record and just naturally you want to think like, okay, they're not that good. But then you kind of watch the game, it's like, nah, they're good. They just don't finish, or they just find ways in a sense to lose the game. But I think now when you start kind of changing that narrative towards the end of the season, now it's like, okay, now this team is pretty good. They just had a rough start. So, I mean, just for us, just got to continue to find ways to finish, and I think that after we do that, I think we'll be a very dangerous team.
Yeah, I went back before the season and looked up everybody's record on this roster, and there hadn't been many guys that had a winning record, a handful. And I think over time that will get better.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it just comes with experience. I mean, even I think if you look from the top down, I think everybody's in newer positions. I mean, even starting with Ryan Poles, he's a first-year GM. Coach Flus is a first-year head coach. So it's like there's a lot of people that are in newer positions that have been around winning.
Correct.
But for, like you said, being in it yourself and actually having to drive that boat and be the leader and be that dude that shows teams how to win or shows your players and things like that. So I mean, I think we're all building it together. I think it's just a matter of getting the right pieces, and I think we have the right pieces. We just got to continue to gel together and continue to go through these experiences, and then really just have the kick the door down mentality. Because I mean, we've been knocking at the door so many times, and just throughout this season, just knocking at the door. But at some point, we got to take that step to kick the door down.
I love your confidence. You came in the league that way, honestly.
Right.
You have to. You have to be a corner, right? Yeah. You're 24, right?
Yes,
24.
Sir. 24.
You seem a lot older than that.
I appreciate it.
You don't look old. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying you just have a way about you, and your confidence of going to a podium, and it can be looked at many different ways.
Right.
Saying, yeah, I think I'm the best corner in the league. I'm going to be the best corner in the league. I think there's few guys in this league. This is what you've said over the course of your career that could cover better than me.
Right.
But I've got the truth. The truth is the truth. The truth is the truth, right? Like your catch rate, all 4 years is in the 57 to 54% range, which is outstanding. Guys are catching the ball when it's thrown in your direction. They have a battle with you.
Right.
The facts are the facts. It's 4 years of it.
Right.
Right? Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what I pride myself in doing. I think when it comes to coming to challenging and really getting after wide receivers, I mean, that's what that's what I've always wanted to do. I mean, just in college, that's what I did. And I think just coming down to the league, nothing for me changes. Just continue to perfect my craft, continue to get smarter and learn offenses, learn different concepts. And I think that's what has took me over the top this year, really learning what the offense wants to do, learning situational ball. But, I mean, honestly, it just all comes down to the mentality of just being a dog and competing.
How about this, too? This year, and it hasn't been much over the course of your career, but less than 100 yards after the catch allowed. What's going on there?
I mean, sticky coverage. I mean, if they do catch it, the few times that they do catch it, I think it's one of those where I'm right there on them. So just being able to get them down right away. But, I mean, honestly, you just got to be in the right position. I mean, sometimes you're going to give them the catches, and then just when you do, you got to get them down.
All right, you had a 2-interception game against Vegas. You had the interception against Minnesota. That's been a big point, right? For you, too.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
For you, too. And, you know, you made a comment a couple weeks ago, like, I don't know what's going on with a couple drops. And you're going to go back to, you know, is it a Darnell Mooney hit the jugs gun every day type of situation? Or, well, I mean, it's a little different when you're a receiver and a corner, but what have you learned about that part of it, about your game in your hands?
Honestly, really just getting in that point. I mean, I feel like up until this year, I haven't had too many of those opportunities in the game. So, I mean, just slowing down when you get to that point. I think that's the biggest part. I mean, sometimes, especially as a DB, you got to react, you got to go fast. But just in that moment of catching, because, I mean, I have pretty good hands, but at times, I know, especially against Minnesota, thinking about the end zone and thinking about what I'm going to do after, it's like, nah, you just got to see it all the way in first. So, it's like not getting those game reps, I think, I feel like we're shown clearly, but just after practice, just continue to every time I catch, make sure I'm looking the ball all the way in. And honestly, speaking of Mooney, we were catching a few weeks ago, and he showed me this thing that he does. And he was like, every time he catches it, he calls what he sees, and it's like, does he see spaces or laces? So, I mean, we've caught a few times after practice, and just when I am catching with the quarterbacks and things, I just always want to catch it and then, in a sense, call out what I see. So, definitely credits to him and giving me some of those wide receiver tips. But I think that's the biggest thing, just being able to focus and slow down in that catch point and just call out what I see.
Best moment that's happened to you as a Bear, and your worst?
I would probably say Walter Payton, Man of the Year nominee.
Yeah.
I'll probably say that one. Worst moment, I would say my rookie year. It was Detroit. We played Detroit. And if I'm not mistaken, I gave up, I want to say maybe two touchdowns. One of them was a scramble drill, 50-50. He caught it, whatever. And then the second one, crunch time, in a sense, just wasn't in the right position, reading the concept. I ended up throwing the ball, I feel like, in between me and the safety, but it's supposed to be my coverage. And then they scored. And then they ended up winning that game. So I would probably say my worst moment.
Everybody's got a good and a worst, that's for sure.
You know what's amazed me when I listen to that interview and you say you look older, because he's still a young man, 24 years old. Then you think of how young Jaquan is, how young Carla Gordon is, how young Tariq Stevenson is, how young Terrell Smith is. Yeah. This is a young defensive backfield. And then because as we were sitting here, I was looking up the age of Eddie Jackson. They say he's 30 years old. That's hard for me to believe. I know. But it's a young defensive backfield. And it's a talented defensive backfield. So I guess when you throw out the statistics of the way Jaylon is playing, the proof is in the numbers. So he's having a great start of his career. And, he should be proud of himself because there's a lot of responsibility at the defensive back and the cornerback position specifically to go out there and be able to play in the NFL.
Yeah, it is crazy, this whole age thing, especially when you talk about a 38-year-old quarterback the Bears will be facing in Joe Flacco on Sunday, and he's throwing to guys like David Bell was 7 years old when Flacco got drafted in the first round. So that's the weirdness of having these veteran quarterbacks. All right, when we come back, we'll listen in to the special teams component of this matchup between the Bears and the Cleveland Browns with Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak here on Bears Weekly on ESPN Chicago and the Bears Radio Network.
You're tuned into Bears Weekly with Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by CDW. People to get it with Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak, as we get you set for Bears and Browns. We heard from Richard Hightower this week. The NFL, I guess, is concerned about the kick returns. They're way down, way down. The biggest number of a single return guy is 16 returns. They usually you get into the 30s. We know how we feel about it. It's ruining it.
Don't put me on an open mic about that topic, because you know where I'm going to go.
Here's Richard Hightower, the Bears special teams coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we got to look at in the offseason. Obviously, I think Troy's desired result and the league's desired result is league wanted the kick returns to go down, which has happened. I still feel like it's a phenomenal play. It's very exciting. Hopefully, Devin gets in the hall soon, because he made that play what it is today, because it's just a phenomenal football play. We want to keep the foot in the game. I mean, they call it football for a reason. It's because you kick the ball. So we want to look at it, and we want to look at it in the offseason and see how we can make the play even better. And I think everybody wants to keep the foot in the game. So that's the way I would address it. And as the weather changes, I mean, I think the returns that went down early, but as the weather changes, the returns are going to start to go up now. So we'll just see how it is. We'll revisit it after the season.
Troy Vincent of the NFL office says the kickoff rule change has gone too far in terms of reducing the number of returns. They want to find a better middle ground. I think also those who don't recall the great Gale Sayers, man, he was unstoppable returning kicks. Devin revolutionized how teams tried to defend the kick return coverage.
Billy White-Shoes Johnson, Ricky Upchurch, there's Gale Sayers.
Dante Hall.
There's
Cordero Patterson. Desmond Howard.
I mean, just Tim Brown. So there's tons of guys. You know, it's the most difficult running play to be taught by a coach. And that's what it is. You catch the kickoff, and then you have assignments to every one of the other 10 guys, and you're designed a running play, point of attack, creating a lane, sustaining a block, head placement, and all that. It's difficult to coach. And for them to try to take it out of the game, it's just embarrassing.
Well, it is, and it's deflating, because you think about it. You start the game, crowd's ready to rock. You kick off and sails out of the back of the end zone, or on a few occasions, because there haven't been many, a fair catch.
Right.
It's a buzzkill. And coming out at halftime, same thing. Keep pointing the game. I mean, it's strategy that's going out the window. Remember the game against the Vikings with Adrian Peterson? It was an unbelievable game. He had a great game run on the ball. And they put him back to return a kickoff.
Right.
I mean, DJ Moore could do the same.
Walter's done. Walter did it in his career.
And it's all in the name of safety. Don't you think in a punt return is not as safe as a kickoff return?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to put the blame game on an aspect of football that you say is too dangerous, I don't think kickoff return is the way to go about it. Again, I don't know what's the difference when I played on every single kickoff return throughout my whole career, and that's when you could have the wedge. So, yeah, then they took the wedge apart. Now they tried to dissect the process of the return to make it safer. It's just a ridiculous way that people that have never played the game are trying to make the game safer.
Eric Metcalf.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so exciting. It's the excitement factor. It's something strategy in your pocket.
One of the greatest games in Chicago Bear history was an overtime kickoff return by David Williams against the Detroit Lions.
On Thanksgiving.
And it was a kickoff return that decided that game. So we have a lot of different complaints, but I guess
the kicking game is going to be big. You know, you can make a case because it's a Rust Belt town, Cleveland, by the lake, like Chicago, that stadium. And that stadium it's challenging. But the winds at Soldier Field are definitely harder to navigate. The turf, which has changed in a very positive way with the Bermuda grass now. But they got a really good kicker in Dustin Hopkins. The Bears have a really good kicker in Cairo Santos. Their special teams coordinator, the former player Bubba Ventrone, says absolutely Hopkins should be a Pro Bowler. He said 8 of 8 from 50-plus, but he's forgetting that Cairo is 7 for 7. So, they're both having great years. And hey, this could be the type of game, because of the wild card with injuries on their side of the fence, this could be a game that decides by a field goal.
Well,
easily.
The whole end of the season, they're all outdoor games. Yeah. And, kickers, they become a different, type of a kicking animal when conditions get unfavorable. So whether it's the footing for the punter, the plant step for a kicker, or whatever the case may be.
Bears special teams unit has improved over the course of the season, Tom. And there, you talked about the young secondary. Some of those guys are playing on special teams. They've gotten defensive snaps like Elijah Hicks. Elijah Hicks is a very emotional player on special teams. He was pointed that out by Richard Hightower. You've got Blackwell. He's outstanding. Very, very good player. I mean, we can go down the list.
Tyreek Stevenson caused the fumble in the Detroit game.
Roshan Johnson was out there.
Yep.
He's, this is the beginning of something. It is, really, with all these young players.
Right. Well, listen, if you are our starter, you have to be willing to contribute on special teams, whether you're in a starting role or in a backup position. And probably during the course of the season, your number is going to be called just because out of a need in numbers in a game. So I think it's as equally as important role. Even if you're only designed to do one play, you got to do it right, and you have to understand what your assignment is.
Coming up next, our sit-down with Bernie Kosar from our Bears Etc. podcast, a portion of that 37-minute interview. Coming up next here on Bears Weekly on ESPN Chicago and the Bears Radio Network.
You're listening to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. He was one of the best quarterbacks during an era where the Cleveland Browns were, they were contenders until the Denver Broncos and John Elway took it away from them several times. But Bernie Kosar was the guy running the show. He's got perspective. He watches a lot of football. He is very close to Tom and I from his days coming over in our booth. And Tom obviously playing in the same era. Bernie was a 1985 draft pick out of the University of Miami down in Florida. And we've had some really good times. He's also battled a lot physically and emotionally. Some of that here in this interview on Bears Weekly.
To see Joe Flacco in a Cleveland Brown uniform and playing in the old Cleveland Brown Stadium is a little unique and challenging to some of us CTE'd or TBI'd concussed old quarterbacks. But seeing him on the Brown side of things as opposed to the Ravens or last year, we were mortified when he was playing for the Jets and had that miracle comeback against the Browns last year. The way our defense is playing, the way our offensive line is playing, and to see Joe Flacco, who literally 2.5 weeks ago was sitting on his couch, and now to see him throwing, and to see him throwing, and I'm not trying to say this, guys, to be a homer or to strike up this Browns-Bears thing. I'm really just talking about it from the ultimate respect of an old quarterback watching another quarterback play. To see him throw the skinny bang 8 post that he threw a couple times against the Rams 2 weeks ago, and then what he was doing last weekend's game, and to have that sense of timing, to be able to hit those balls now with that sense of timing now, it's really impressive after all those years in the league that he's still able to make those type of throws. And the way Coach Stefanski and our offense and Coach Callahan's been handled. We've had a ton of injuries on the offensive line, and with Tom on the call here, I'd love to see what he thinks about our offensive line. I mean, we're on the third level of third string, yet our offensive line is dominating and giving Joe Flacco with the running game time. So the play action pass and being a old school quarterback, drop back pocket quarterback with offensive line play. With guys that, have only been there as little amount of time as Joe Flacco, it's actually really impressive.
Hey, Bernie, my last year in Miami, Steve DeBerg and I came aboard the same time in Miami. He practiced for 4 days, and then he was able to start a game. You look at the similarities with the age and Joe Flacco's experience. So does Joe Flacco come in and tell Stefanski the plays, the types of patterns he likes the most, and then you build upon that? Or does Joe Flacco have to invest himself in the terminology of the Cleveland Browns playbook and play by their rules?
So I'm going to get to that latter question, my man, but I wanted to get back to that 1993 Steve DeBerg coming and learning that system in four days and playing that awesome guard, Tom Thayer and stuff, because Bernie Kosar got whacked that year too. Okay, so I was getting talked to by the Dolphins too. So it was me and Steve DeBerg were debating between the Dolphins and the Cowboys and stuff. Steve ended up at the Dolphins and stuff. I could have went from Jay Hilgenberg taking snaps down to Hubbard next to Tom Thayer. Okay. But as it pertains to the play calling and the system and what Joe Flacco is going to want to do, there were some cute things that happened towards the end of our Browns game. We had a 4th and 2 where we went for it on the plus 40-yard line, ended up hitting it for a touchdown when they blew the coverage last week and stuff. And you can see the excitement of Coach Stefanski running down the field. You can see the excitement of Joe Flacco. Veteran QBs and the respect the coaches tend to have for us older QBs. I could see them really tailoring game plans now that are really in Joe's sweet spot, stuff that he really feels good at doing. And again, the Bears see these things, but again, he's 38 years old. And whether he's the Browns quarterback or not, I'm not smiling. I'm not giving these glowing statements. I'm massively impressed. Tom, as we were waiting for you to get on air here, I was joking with Jeff and stuff off air. I can't believe how he's throwing the skinny post. I mean, he was sitting on the couch 2.5 weeks ago. Now he's throwing bang 8s off of a 5-step drop, throwing him like he's a 23-year-old guy with such arm talent. It's super impressive to watch.
Myles Garrett, though, he scares us now. He scared us in Justin's first NFL start, and Tom has many opinions on what happened in that start, but he was hit 15 times, sacked 9 times. Garrett had 4.5 of those sacks and hit him 6 times. I think he's healthy, but is he having an MVP-type season for you, and what awaits the Bears when they take on that Browns front 4? So
of course we love Myles Garrett. There's no denying his awesomeness and how he's been playing. The Bears, and Myles is a tough guy. He's not complaining at all, about his injuries and stuff, but he does have a shoulder injury that the Bears know about and the world knows about. And he's been playing probably at 80-ish%. So the last week or two, getting an 80% Myles Garrett, giving 100% effort, but physically that's maybe not as dominant as we saw a month ago when you have Tom, you remember the old fresh legs perspective and good health and stuff of it. But you mentioned the Justin Fields first game against Myles Garrett and the 4.5 sacks to 15 hits. Let's see, again, I'm not trying to pick on that system, okay? But that system wasn't set up at all for success for Justin Fields as a young quarterback. I think it's actually sinful to put that young man in that spot back then. And that really retards his potential chance at growth right then. So, again, I'm a Browns fan, so that bodes well for us. But I don't like to see a young man like that be stunted in his development and be put kind of in a system back then that, man, he shouldn't have been in. And you guys are still suffering the ramifications or the repercussions of that system and those hits. Because, I'm looking at you, Jeff, right in the eyes as we're on screen now. But us QBs, I don't want to look goofy on camera here, but us QBs got to look up. We're looking past the Mike linebackers. We're looking in almost to the screen, and we're trying to see the whole picture. That's easier said than done, and I'm still doing that now. But when the play starts and guys are coming around you and stuff, and that old system when Justin Fields that day got hit 15 times and got 4.5 sacks by Myles Garrett, man, the eyes have to drop. They have to come down. And when you're a QB, and now I'm hovering, and I see Tom Thayer's backside, okay, that's a negative sign for us quarterbacks. We don't, and I mean this in the most respect. Jay Hilgenberg, who blocked next to Tom, also, I got the honor of putting my hands under his backside and stuff. I never saw those guys because they were so good. You knew you didn't have to drop your eyes down. Justin Fields, early in his career, when he's developing his confidence, his self-esteem, I've used I use the phrase "you matter" a lot here in Cleveland. It's not from the University of Miami. It's because you matter. And us quarterbacks, we're acting like we're always calm and we have our self-belief, but there's self-confidence and self-esteem. And if you don't have it, your eyes drop. You don't have a belief that the play is going to hold up. You don't have a belief that the offensive line is going to hold up together. So you drop your eyes down and you take a look for Myles Garrett, and that makes for a horrible day. If you're a Bears fan, it makes for a great day if you're a Browns fan. That's why we love the NFL.
So you're taking your career from consideration. You look at the tough guy image of that era of football. You think of the quarterback position, and then you think what Tom Brady said 2 weeks ago and the state of the toughness in preparation of the modern day NFL. Do you have any reaction towards what he said, and do you agree or disagree with it?
Tom, the old school QBs. Now, I probably could get a little long-winded on this answer, and as I look at some of these old cranium-inflating pictures of me behind me and stuff of the old days, we were joking, me and you and Jeff joke on air and off air for more than the last decade about some of the health issues that we've gone through, that we go through, and proudly what we did when we played. And I don't want to see guys get hit like we got hit, and it's kind of the barbaric gladiator days of it. But I am super proud to be sitting here, to be healthy, to be cognitively present. After 40 surgeries, 80 broken bones, 100 concussions, had 15 seizures. My last 2 seizures at the O'Hare Airport, I was in a coma for 96 hours, coming from a concussion evaluation with the NFL docs. So I don't want to see these younger quarterbacks go through some of the stuff that I'm going through health-wise and kind of what I've been doing on my health and wellness journey to come out of it. Heck, the great quarterback, Jim McMahon, I've been looking at his ankle and some of the stuff that, he's going through with his rehab and us trying to be healthy now and that. God, one of your old teammates that you used to block, Steve McMichael, and what he's going through. So there's so many of those type gladiator issues that some of our friends aren't doing well with, that, I'm super proud to be cognitively present and to be basically physically pretty good. But boy, Tom, some of the stuff that we went through and some of our friends are going through now, it's awesome that you and me are able to be on air today and talk decently, articulately, but God, so many of our friends aren't able to do that. So when I hear statements like that, I kind of feel proud to be here. When I hear Tom Brady make those statements, the physical thing I think is okay, but one of the things that maybe he's referring to is because they don't maybe practice as much, and I actually see this a little bit in the development of Justin Fields in Chicago. I'm a big, big fan of your QB there. And I love his athleticism. I love the way he plays and his presence. But maybe Tom, your question and what Tom Brady's maybe referring to is his level of coaching and the system that he got early in his career and the attention to detail and almost the obsessiveness that we had with knowledge and practice back in the day. I was on top of that gladiator type, kill or be killed attitude from the physical side. But boy, from the mental side, it was a master's program of practice and intelligence from the X's and O's. And I see that kind of lacking a little bit in what they're teaching the younger quarterbacks. And they're asking them really to not learn the whole field and the whole game like Tom Brady, like myself, was kind of groomed. And that's kind of limiting to young quarterbacks. And I see guys like, Justin Fields kind of struggling early in his development because of, I think, some of those statements like that Tom Brady's making about maybe the development of the coaching of that isn't what it's up to par.
Nothing's been easy for you, has it? And, you look fantastic, number one. Just look really good and healthy and happy. So first and foremost, are you?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Jeff. You mentioned the Kosar coffee and stuff. I don't do that for a shameless plug.
Yeah.
In that.
What's in it?
Well, what's in it is I infuse, and I have a patent with some great partners and stuff, and I've become a holistic kind of healer in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter of my life. I mean, I joked about it. So we infuse vitamin D and resveratrol. So I'm not a drinker anymore. Resveratrol is the top antioxidant that you find in red wine. So as a moderate Vitamix juicer now, as a guy who's had 40 surgeries, 80 broken bones, I was saying earlier, the 100 concussions, 14 seizures, that last one in Chicago that I was telling you about earlier, in a coma for 96 hours. And that was 5.5 years ago, 2017. About 2017-ish, I was told that I have 4 years left of cognitive brain function. You guys remember when you and me, we used to do the shows 6, 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I was okay, but man, I couldn't really enunciate, articulate, communicate any multiple syllable words. So 4 years ago, when I was told I had 5 years left of cognitive brain function, when the doctors in the Chicago hospital said, "Hey, man, you're a tough guy. You're doing great. Keep up with your prescriptions and protocols." Man, I was on like 60-some pills a day. Wow. I was close to 1,000 milligrams scripted of OxyContins, Adderalls, Vyvanse. So now to not have taken a pill in 5 years, to have figured out how to be juicing and stuff and how to do smart supplementation, kind of with my Kosar Wellness, with my Kosar Coffee, I've really been able to almost slow down the deterioration of my cognitive decline, and physically, I've been really feeling good. So
your name is recognized around our country, whether you say Bernie or you say Kosar. In everything you were able to accomplish on the football field, you may look awkward throwing the ball, but you threw it in the right spot. Everything that you've accomplished over the last few years, and as well as Jeff and I know you, it overshadows everything you were able to accomplish on the football field. And I have nothing but admiration, and I can't wait for the people to be able to hear your story and to listen to you and understand what you've overcome and how your arrow is pointed up. And I tell you what, I can't say enough and tell you how much I appreciate you for it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you guys.
Well, you didn't hear there. He was in Atlanta this week with Commissioner Goodell, who will be at the game on Sunday, along with Michael Vick and some other quarterbacks, as they inspire change, which is an NFL initiative here this month. So he's doing a lot of different things. He's not sitting around, that's for sure.
Right. There's a lot of people that aren't athletes that are going through struggles in their life. And if you could ever pass on an interview to a person that needs some quality advice or some assurances that if you do the right things, you can turn things around, I think that's what Bernie impressed me most with, because we saw him at times where we are looking at him going, wow, is everything okay with him? Listen,
everything wasn't okay.
This interview, everything was okay.
Yeah.
He was a clearly speaking, intelligent guy that is really on the right track to recovery, and I just couldn't be more happy for a guy that I really enjoy his company.
That's Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. One more segment to go as we break down the Bears and Browns on ESPN Chicago and the Bears Radio Network. Want VIP access to every Bears home game, exclusive seating, sideline credentials, and more now available. Get the ultimate VIP fan package this season by visiting ChicagoBearsVIP.com. Jeff and Tom, our final segment before we get you set for Bears and Browns. Dave Borgonzi talked a lot about the linebackers, and that's his position of strength. He's the guy at the podium this week without a true defensive coordinator. That is Matt Eberflus's job, but boy, he's got a trio of guys that we love, and I love Noah Sewell's potential as well. But Tremaine Edmonds flashing some really good play as a heavy investment in free agency. Same with T.J. Edwards having a Pro Bowl year, and Jack Sanborn makes plays. Just a great trio as we listen in to Dave Borgonzi explain.
They're really close. Really, the whole group is close. And then Tremaine and T.J., Coming from different places last year, the bond really started when they got here. It is really their love for football. They love competing. They love practicing. They love getting ready for the game. So, and they are competitive with each other, which really works for the whole room. So right now we're in a takeaway competition amongst the linebackers. So they're competing against each other, which is great. And that's the formula to win games. What we talk about is hustle, intensity, takeaways, smart situational football. And the takeaways, that's the best stat in ball. That correlates the most to winning. And it's something that we practice, and it's something we take a lot of pride in.
What do you think of this trio?
They're super inspirational to this football team because I think they came aboard at the beginning of the year. They were receiving some criticism, but they never let the criticism get them down. And then when you look at them through mid-season, they started to improve at such a high rate that they started to be talked about around the league as one of the better segments of the Bears defense. Now you look at their performance late in the season, they are one of the best linebacking trios in all of the league. But then the influence they have on the younger guys that are in the room, because Borgonzi said this is a good room. And you have to have a positive atmosphere from the veterans to make sure the rookies and the young guys keep included, because I do think that, eventually when you get your rep or you're going out there, you're competing, you're working the show team, and you're playing at a high level because the guys in front of you are committed and playing at a high level themselves.
And Dylan Cole, a veteran, also in that group as well. He also talked about the speed of Tremaine Edmonds, and that's starting to show. They're cutting him loose a little bit on the blitz. I was teasing Coach Eberflus on the Bears Etc. podcast on Monday. Hey, keep coming. Because you bring him down the middle of a blitz against a quarterback with his hands up. He's 6'5", right, plus the range. And then if you happen to stunt Montez, who's almost 6'7", with 36-inch arms, and then, oh, by the way, Javon Dexter is 6'6" with length, you're clouding vision. You're taking away lanes, aren't you?
Well, anytime you give a linebacker that big a running start at an offensive lineman that has a one-on-one, you're going to create some type of advantage. You talk about the height that's going to take away a throwing lane. If the offensive lineman overcommits and the the linebacker's able to avoid him, then he's bringing pressure on the quarterback and putting him on the run. So there's a lot of elements of a blitz by interior linebacker that can be effective as a defensive lineman out of his stance.
All right, let's go into the game real quick here before we go. Obviously, Myles Garrett, the Browns defense, very good. It all starts with him, really, and the guys up front. And then Greg Newsome out of Northwestern playing some good corner along with Martin Emerson Jr. Last week they combined for 3 interceptions and 3 pass breakups in addition to those 3. So they're playing some good ball, but they're losing their safety, Grant Delpit, right now. I mean, that's big. He's out for the year. How do you attack this defense?
You first of all have awareness of Myles Garrett. Then you have to make sure that you don't have a rhythmic snap count to give them the advantage off of the line of scrimmage. And then I think you have to have a similar game plan approach like you did against the Raiders, when you have to think of those guys having a dynamic, full-efforted defensive end. So how do you run plays away from him? How do you make him have no responsibility inside of a play when you get the ball out of the quarterback's hands immediately? How do you run those types of design sweeps to DJ Moore that you're basically running away from Myles Garrett? So I think it's the creativeness and the design of the plays by Luke Getsy to make sure that you don't put Myles Garrett in the position to succeed.
Duron Harmon is going to play for the Browns, too. He was here. Yeah. He was in Detroit, and now he's in Cleveland. This league is stunning.
Well, the thing about it is, Cleveland has a lot of faith in the pressure that they can put on the quarterback. So no matter who they have in the defensive backfield, they believe that they can make up the time with the pressure so they don't have to add the time to the defensive coverage.
So their offensive tackles, they're 4th and 5th string. That's just the honest truth about that right now. Joel Bitonio, a 32-year-old guard, and Wyatt Teller, he's a nasty guy at guard. He knocked down 2 guys with 1 punch. He got the linebacker and the safety in 1. He's a little nasty, but you got Joe Flacco. So if you can get him off his spot and make him be the mobile quarterback that he is not, then I think you're going to have a good day.
Make him rely on his athleticism, which is not his strength. But you also have to try to challenge his conditioning. I don't care how much work that he's done in preparation of waiting to get his number called. There's nothing like being fatigued, and then that kind of affects all of your fundamentals of being a football player. Now, if you throw the ball awkwardly, if your arm's moving slow, if you don't have a lot of juice on the pass, those types of things you can take advantage of.
Browns play well at home, and they also have done a nice job beating teams in close games. So something to keep an eye on. We'll have it for you starting at 12 o'clock, our kickoff, Bears and Browns in Cleveland. That's going to do it for us. I want to thank you and our guest, Bernie Kosar, also to Jaylon Johnson. For Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks to all our producers. Coming up next, Black and Abdallah here on ESPN Chicago and the Bears Radio Network. Good night, everybody.